Alright, this deck tech. The Guilds of Ravnica Guild Kit Challenge. We take the Guilds of Ravnica Guild Kits, we strip out all the duplicate cards, we upgrade it to an EDH deck by adding cards that are $1 or less. And then we battle it out to see who can build the best budget list. Hey guys, Shannon the Timmy from the Trinisphere here, coming at you with a budget Trostani list. I had built Trostani budget lists, so I thought it'd be really cool for this challenge to see what it would look like had I reduced the cost down to $1 or less per card outside of the ones included in the Guilds of Ravnica Guild Kit. As always, we are the Trinisphere, where Timmy, Johnny, and Spike battle over all things EDH. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel if you want to see what the Johnny and the Spike are up to brewing. We also have a guest that'll be joining us, and his deck list may be up there as well. If you guys like these kinds of deck techs or gameplays, be sure to like and subscribe so you get a notification, especially when the gameplay related to this deck tech comes out in about a week. Alright guys, let's get into the deck list itself. We got ourselves Trostani, Selesnya's Voice. So like I said, I had built this before, budget list, but now I'm interested to see what it looks like budgeted. You can see on the right there, it's about $60, but that's including roughly $30 that came out of the $20 MSRP guild kit. That privileged position that comes in that guild kit is $20. So it already gives you, if MSRP is $20, you're already getting your money back there. And there's a bunch of other stuff added in there. So let's talk about Trostani. She's a 4-mana 2/5. When creatures enter the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to their toughness. She can pay 3 tap to populate. So right off the bat, I'm thinking 3 different ways to build this chick. 1, it's a life gain deck. You're trying to increase your life total to an enormous amount, and then use your life total as a resource, whether it be Aetherflux Reservoir to blow people up, or using your life total as card advantage to draw cards through other means, using some ways to turn it into creatures, maybe a Sarah Avatar. There's also a token deck, because of course populate makes a copy of a token creature, so you can build a deck that is token centric. However, the smaller the tokens, the worse the populate is. So you're trying to look for like a medium ground where you're making like 4/4s beasts or 4/4 flying angels, maybe something a little bit bigger. That's when populate starts becoming worthwhile. The third possible archetype would be tapping and untapping, because she has a tap ability, and she's in a color pie that facilitates tapping and untapping very easily. So you could build a deck in theory that spent a lot of time and effort tapping Trostani or untapping Trostani, or doing that multiple times throughout each player's turn. But of course, we're using the guild kit, and that came with a lot of token strategy, or token value cards. So we're going to go deep into the tokens. I know it's a big shocker that I'm doing another token list, but I couldn't avoid it with this one. So let's take a look at the breakdown. We broke it down into 7 categories. We got tokens, we got anthems, we've got utility cards, then we got our removal, our ramp, and our draw, and then I have a new special dregs section. Dregs being the crap they added to this list that is entirely unplayable. So, but we're gonna run one of every card, so they're in the list, and I'll power through, I guess. All right, let's start with the tokens. We're gonna start off with 2 bangers right off the bat. Advent to the Wurm, 4 mana, instant speed, 5/5 trampler, awesome. So Trostani's going to gain his 5 life through the trigger. This is instant speed to blow out our opponents, and we can populate to make more of these. This thing is magnificent. Then we have Armada Wurm, which is an even bigger and better version of that. It's a 6 mana 5/5 trampling creature that comes in when it comes into play makes the worm from the previous card. We lose our instant speed to gain a brother worm, worthwhile. Next up, we added in Assure and Assemble. Assure giving us the ability to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature and give it indestructible until end of turn, so that's protection from removal. And then we have Assemble, which gives us 3 2/2 knights with vigilance at instant speed. Call the Conclave was included in the deck, and this is like the very, very, very bottom end of the spectrum of playable cards. I would probably be cutting this as soon as you want to invest money into this deck, but for now, it'll have to do. It makes a It's a sorcery, a 2-mana sorcery that makes a 3/3 with no evasion. And that's the biggest problem here. A 3/3 with no evasion is practically worthless in EDH. Conclave Cavalier is a 4-mana 4/4 with vigilance, and when it dies, it makes 2/2/2 vigilant creatures. So this one's pretty good, I would say. 4/4 vigilant is pretty strong. It can attack and then immediately block, and no one really wants to kill it because if they end up trading with it, you just get your value back. So it's a pretty good card. We added in Desolation Twin because we use the Timmys, yo. So we got a 10-mana 10/10 that when you cast it makes a 10/10, right? Did I say that right? So when you cast this card, you gain 20 life off of Trostani. When you populate with Trostani, you gain another 10 life and another 10/10. What? The biggest downfall of the Desolation Twin is there's no evasion here. So it's going to get chump blocked for days, but you know what? For 3 mana, if you're making another 10/10, you're going to get there eventually, I would hope. And there may be some other ways in this deck to give it evasion. We got Amara, Soul of the Accord. She's only 71 cents. Kind of a big surprise because she seems to be a little bit of a fan favorite combo-y kind of commander now in Selesnya. So she does not quite as pushed in this deck as you would see her in other ones because, of course, we don't have as many ways to tap her and untap her. I mean, we talked a little bit about Trostani having a tap-untap build, but for now we're just using her for her token generation. There are a few ways in here to tap her or untap her. There's a Glare of Subdual that can just tap our creatures to tap down opponents' creatures. And there's also a ton of Convoke crap in here too. So there'll be a few ways outside of combat to tap her, but also a 2-mana 2/2 on turn 2. There's probably a couple times, you're probably going to swing a couple times before our opponents can even muster a defense. They added in Growing Ranks, which is pretty bad. It's a pretty terrible card. It's a 4-mana do-nothing enchantment. And what I mean it's a do-nothing enchantment is it takes a full turn to take effect, and it requires other cards in order to be good. So top decking this card is probably very bad for you. In a vacuum post, planar cleansing where they destroyed all permanents, playing this card is really bad. And even if you have a Desolation Twin token in play, and you cast a Growing Ranks, you must pass the turn, which gives all of your opponents times to coordinate a defense, to figure out a way to disrupt Growing Ranks, or just destroy the Desolation Twin token. You'll be seeing people making deals when you do this. They'll be like, I'll scratch your back if you blow up that Desolation. It's going to be bad. This is one of those cards that it works too slow to be worthwhile. All right, we got Mere Battle Ball, which we added in here because it's awesome. It's a 7-mana 4/7 colorless creature that gives us 4 1/1s. It's pretty good return on investment. It can also push through damage through when the board kind of stalls out because it likes to fling 4 damage over the top when you tap all your Mirror when attacking. You've got a Via Pashari, Sage Lifecrafter, 1-mana 1/2, 3-mana tap, make a 1/1, 5-mana tap, make an XX, or X's number of creatures you control. So this is kind of like it's a really budget impression of Risk the Redeemed. So it's a 1-mana creature that can make a lot of tokens, and if it's not dealt with, it gets quite out of hand quite quickly. So you can expect this girl to eat a removal spell pretty quickly. No one's going to allow you to generate multiple XXs turn after turn. We also add in Regna the Redeemer, 6-mana 4/4 flying, and at the end of each end step, if you gain life this turn, you make 2 1/1s. So, with Trostani in play, we're pretty much guaranteed to be making 1/1s at the end of the turn you cast her. So, like we said about Growing Ranks, takes too long to trigger. Regna is the opposite of the spectrum. Triggers pretty quickly. It gets you at least some of your money back on your investment. Now, it triggers at the end of each end step. That means we may have a Soul Warden in here, which allows us to create 2 1/1s at the end of each opponent's end step if they had played a creature on their turn. And there's plenty of other ways to gain life on other people's turns. Also to note, if you gain life and then you cast Regna, she still sees that you gain life this turn, even if she wasn't alive when you had gained that life. That include a Scatter the Seeds, which is another instant speed token generator, but it makes 3 1/1s. It has Convoke, so it's like whatever, but you probably want to cut this card pretty quickly because 5 mana for 3 1/1s, even if you Convoke it down to 2 mana for 3 1/1s, is not very good. There's also a Selesnya Guild Mage, which is just barely playable in here. 4 mana for a 1/1 is a really bad return on your investment. Now, it does have a 4-mana pump your board by 1 ability, so if you have a ton of mana, you can kind of push through a bunch of damage. You can kind of like swing and stare down your opponent, give him the old death glare, and see what he does on his block step, because it's going to be really hard for him to work around you having like maybe 8 mana open. All right, going on from tokens, we have a few primo ones we want to talk about, which are the Landfallers. One of my favorite token generators in Magic is a Maria Angel, 4-mana 3/3 flyer with a landfall trigger that creates birds, 1/1 flying birds. So I love landfall triggers because it's so easy to do, and when you're in green, it's so easy to do into excess. So generating 1/1 flyers is something that's a little bit beneficial for a Selesnya deck because it doesn't necessarily have as many 1/1 or as many flyers, flying blockers or attackers as other color pies. So generating 1/1s to block flying shuts down a lot of attackers, gives you a lot of defenses, flying defenses, but then also allows you to turn the corner and start attacking people with your 1/1 flyers, and all for the cost of just playing lands, which is awesome. Speaking of playing lands, we have Rampaging Baylets, probably the Timmiest token generator out there. I love this card. 6-mana 6/6 with Trample. Whenever you play a land, you get a 4/4 Beast. So 4/4 Beast is like, it doesn't have Trample itself, but it's almost perfect in that it is. The risk is worth it. I mean, all you have to do is play a land to get a 4/4, and that's something that is worthwhile to populate off of a Trostani. Moving on, we have Anthems and Overruns. The deck included a Bounty of Might, which is a hilarious triple giant growth. So you can use this after blocks are declared to either push through an extra 9 damage or to blow out some of their stronger blockers. We put in an Oran Reef the Vastwood, which just pumps all of our green creatures that came into play this turn. So you got to use it as a sorcery speed effect. Also, keep in mind, it only does green creatures, so it can't pump your birds, but this is going to increase the lethality of a lot of our 1/1s. We're also going to run Overwhelming Stampede. You know, there's a lot of really good overrun effects, but unfortunately, a lot of them are pretty expensive. Overwhelming Stampede is only 66 cents, though. And for 5 mana, the low price of 5 mana, all your creatures gain Trample. All of them get +X/+X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So, if you have a Desolation Twin token out, that's +10/+10 in Trample for 5 mana. Now, granted, your opponents aren't idiots. They're going to remove your biggest creature in response to you casting this. So you want to keep in mind that you want to have a backup creature. Maybe not a 10/10. Maybe your backup creature is a Rampaging Bailet token. So now it's +4/+4 in Trample. So it's debatable whether or not you want to play this over just a generic overrun. But one of the things that I like about this, it's high risk, high reward. Obviously, you can get more than +3/+3 that overrun gives you. But also important to note, it's 3 green to cast, whereas Overrun is 2 green. And, you know, that's a little harder to cast, especially with a budget mana base. So I think even in a bad scenario where you're only +2/+2ing your board and giving it Trample, it's still worthwhile to not get screwed on the casting cost. We're also going to run Tolsimir Wolfblood, which he came with the deck. He's one of the other legendary creatures. He gives green creatures +1/+1, white creatures +1/+1. He also makes Super Pup Voja, which is a 2/2 legendary green-white wolf. And then last inclusion in the deck is Venerated Loxodon, and that is a 5-mana 4/4 with Convoke, and he puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature that convoked it. The wording, it says that convoked it, whatever. Anyways, I don't like this card at all, but it's in here, and we're going to run it because it pumps our board. But it asks us to tap down our board to pump it, which is just, it's gross to me, but it's here, and we're going to have to use it. Moving on, we're going to talk about our utility cards. So these are some of our meta considerations and guys that didn't fit in the other categories. So the deck included a Dryad Militant, which of course exiles instants and sorceries that would be put in their graveyard to hose the Izzet player. It also ran a Loxodon Hierarch, which sacks itself to regenerate our board to prevent some board wipes and other removal. It came with the Privileged Position, which I don't really know why. This is a token deck, and generally speaking, token decks don't eat a lot of spot removal. This is more of an Enchantress card, in my opinion, but hey, who's gonna be mad about getting past a $20 card in their $20 Guild Kit? We also jammed in Soul Warden, which triggers off of freaking anything, man. This is going to gain us so much life. I think on average a Soul Warden gains me 8 to 10 life if it comes out early. This is going to trigger your Dawn of Hope to turn your life gain into draw power. Or, I'm sorry, it's going to turn them playing a creature into you drawing a card. It's also going to trigger your Regna to make 1/1s at the end of their turn. And then last but not least, we are adding in Crash of Rhino Beetles because I think this is freaking hilarious. This is a 5-mana 5/5 with Trample, but if you have 10 or more lands, it is a 15/15 Trampler. for 5 mana. So Trostani's out, gain 15 life. You may not be able to make tokens off of this thing or populate it, but you know, there is some consideration that there are good cards that work with Trostani just because they have big asses and they're cost effective, and this is one of them. Also, we run a decent amount of land-based ramp, so we're going to be putting extra lands into play, so it's going to be easier for us to reach 10 lands than the average player. All right. So from moving on from the deli, we're going into the produce section. So let's talk about removal, ramp, and draw. So I have a lot of removal in this deck, as you can see. There's 3 categories. I broke it down into things that can remove anything, things that can remove creatures, and things that can remove non-creatures. And I like to run a lot of removal in my token decks because, number one, token decks are slow. So I need to interact with my opponents and disrupt what they're doing. If they're combo or if they're reanimator, they're going to be coming out of the gate faster and stronger than I am. So I need to be able to slow them down and stop them and disrupt them while I get a couple more things into place and my mana ready to have more explosive turns. Second of all, if I am having to trade off via board wipe a bunch of tokens for a bunch of real Magic cards, I feel like I'm going to be winning this card advantage game. They've got less cards in their hand after that end step, after that cleanup step, after we bin all those bodies. I'm going to have more cards in my hand because I've committed less to the board and generated fake card advantage. So I'm totally okay in a token deck board wiping because I have full confidence that we're going to be able to bounce back and make more bodies faster than any of our opponents will. And they'll have to be contending with waves and waves of armies post each board wipe. So let's talk about the individual breakdown. Our removal of all deck came with Conclave Tribunal, which is basically a Banishing Light, I think it's called, with Convoke, which is, it's fine. That's okay. It's an okay card. It came with Glare Subdual, which is a very strong card in here. It allows us in late game to trade our 1/1s with their bigger creatures. And by that I mean when we go to attack step, we can just tap down their biggest creatures with our smallest ones, allowing us to push through damage. It can also disrupt many kind of combo decks that require tapping artifacts or creatures. We can, in response, just tap things down. So this card is actually really strong in this deck. Lapse Uncertainty we added in here is a kind of a consideration, a matchup consideration. I know I'm going to be going up against a Golgari, an Izzet, and a Boros deck, and I'm worried about the Izzet deck having a few infinite combos in there, even on a budget. So Lapse Uncertainty gives us the option to disrupt an infinite combo, and now this counters a spell and only puts it on top of their library, which means they can combo off again next turn. But what it does is it buys the whole pod one turn to either wreck that combo player and just absolutely kill them, or find an answer for that combo once we know exactly what it is. Moving on, we have some creature removal. We added in Condemn as another one mana creature removal spell. Deck came with Devouring Light, which exiles attackers and blockers. We ran Fumigate, feeding into that theory that we can recover faster than our opponents post board wipe. So we're going to run one that gains us life. Hollowed Burial, a matchup consideration because we're going up against Golgari, so we don't want to put as many creatures in the graveyard. We want to have the option to put them on the bottom of the deck instead. The deck came with an Hour of Reckoning, which is perfectly fine. And we put in Martial Coup, which is very often a token win condition. So, one of the strongest things that you can do is blow up the board and leave yourself with 5 1/1s. And those 1/1s can get much bigger while your opponents are trying to play 1 or 2 creatures to stabilize, and you're immediately swinging with your waves of 1/1s with maybe pump spells in the backup. Reclamation Sage is in the wrong section. That is definitely not for removing creatures, but it's a non-creature removal spell, and it's a pretty strong one, and I like it that it's attached to a body because it feeds into a lot of the other things that our deck does. Maybe gaining life off of a Trostani or other effects. Selesnya Charm has a lot of different modes, including +2/+2 Trample, creating a 2/2 Vigilance creature, but the one we're going to focus on the most is exiling creature power 5 or greater at instant speed. That is the premium reason to run Selesnya Charm. I rarely ever use the other two, but I frequently am going to be exiling big creatures. Swords to Plowshares, obviously, is an excellent removal spell in white, and it is less than $1, so we're absolutely going to run that. Moving on to non-creature, we have Acidic Slime. We would have had our Reclamation Sage in addition. We have Forsake the Worldly, which is one of my new favorites. It exiles artifacts and enchantments at instant speed, but it also has cycling, so if you need to dig for a better answer, it has that option built in. Sunring Growth was included in the deck. It is a naturalize or a disenchant, but it also has populate. So this card isn't awful. It definitely is a fine addition, and it might keep it in for quite a while until you find a better one, a better card to upgrade it to. All right, moving on from removal, we're going into ramp. We added in Absence Pilgrim because a turn 1 or 2 play facilitates a early or on-time Trostani, because Trostani has a egregious casting cost of green, green, white, white. So this allows you to convert, guarantee that if you have a forest in this creature that you're having at least 1 white on turn 2. Cultivate is the Goldilocks of ramp spells. The 2-drop ones tend to be bad late game. The 4-drop ones tend to be bad if you don't hit your land drops. So I love the 3-drop ones. They effectively add an additional card to your hand, giving you a 2-for-1 when you ramp using these guys. Our deck is going to want a lot of extra mana because we have a 3-mana activated ability on our commander that we want to activate almost every single turn. So having 3 extra mana beyond our normal curve is ideal. And because of that, we're also going to run Elvish Mystic and Llanowar Elves. So these cards are obviously good for triggering things like Soul Warden and Trostani and having other abilities being a body. We're also going to run Harrow, which is an instant speed, sack a land, put 2 into play because we have landfall creatures, and this is an instant speed ramp spell. So this allows us to early game, just blatantly ramp, but late game it allows us to trigger landfall at instant speed. We're going to also play Harvest Season, which rampant grows for every tap creature we have. So this has a potential to be a very strong card, but it can also be a dead card if we have been board wiped just recently. But if they're already throwing out board wipes, then ramping is probably not the most powerful play to be looking towards. Additionally, we have a Nissa's Pilgrimage, once again following up Cultivate. I would have ran Kadama's Reach instead, but I think that card's over $1. So we're going to run this one, which has the potential to get us up to 3 forests if we have Spell Mastery. 1 into play, 2 to hand. But on average, it's going to get us 2 forests. 1 into play tapped and 1 to hand. And then lastly, we have Selesnya Signet, which was included in the deck, which is great because Signets are the bomb. Especially trying to cast Broccoli, China Dish. All right, going on to draw. We have Camaraderie, the newest in wide token card draw technology. So Camaraderie replaced the pretty terrible Collective Unconscious. It is a 6 mana, gain X, draw X for X number of creatures you control, and then pump all your guys by 1. And Collective Unconscious was the older one, which is 6 mana, draw X for X number of creatures you control. So this one has definitely got upside, even if it is only usable by Selesnya and Selesnya Plus decks. We have Dawn of Hope, which is a new exciting card. Whenever you gain life, you can pay 2 to draw a card. 2 is a little steep. It reminds me of what is that card? Landfall draw card artifact. I can't remember what it's called now, but got replaced by much better cards by Tireless Tracker. Anyways. 2 is a little steep, but we're going to take it because we can trigger life gain at any point in time, and especially off of opponent's actions using Soul Warden. It has the additional ability to create 1/1 soldiers with lifelink for 4 mana, but I would never want to do that if I could instead spend the 4 mana on drawing 2 cards. I guess if a board stalls, it has other upside. Now let's talk about Amaria Shepherd. I think this is an underrated EDH card. I think that more decks should be playing this thing. It is a 7 mana 4/4 flying. Wait, I know. Don't gag, just listen. It has a landfall trigger that says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may return a non-land permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. If that land was a plains, instead put that non-land permanent card into play onto the battlefield instead. That means on a landfall trigger, we are regrowthing. What is that? What would that be called? Fine broking? I don't know. Whatever. We're putting cards from graveyard back to hand, but if that land is a plains, it goes directly back into play. I could not tell you how many times in an EDH matchup I've been in a dominant board state, just hammering away at people, and they're struggling to figure out what to do. They finally dig up a board wipe, collectively working together, they then blow me out, and then the next turn I drop an Amaria Shepherd and a plains, just resurrecting that freaking Armada Worm again, making another 14 power out of fucking nowhere, and they're just like, you can just see the hope and joy dissolve from their faces, and that's where I get my chub on right there. So, Amaria Shepherd, recurring things off of lands. We got Harrow in here to instant speed to put 2 planes into play to resurrect both Armada Worm and Rampaging Bayless. Or maybe, you know, Desolation Twin. We don't get the token, but who cares? Screw it. Alright, going on. We'll talk about Mary Shepherd more some other time. Harmonize. Perfectly fine draw spell. Some people really like this card. I think it's a little low on the power spectrum, but considering we're working with budget draw power, we're absolutely going to run Harmonize. Mentor of the Meek is a classic token card drawer, and you can expect to see this even in non-budget lists. It is perfectly fine. Whenever you make a token of power 2 or less, you can pay 1 to draw a card. And we're going to try out Runic Armasar. And that's a 3-mana 2/5. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of a creature or a land, we draw a card. If it's not a mana ability, that is. So I'm not really sure how good this card is, honestly. I haven't had a chance to play with it a lot in EDH, but I have a sneaking suspicion it can get us maybe 3 cards a game, which I think is pretty good. I mean, that's up there with, like, Mystic Remora, or maybe Heuristic Study before people get pissed off and blow it up. It's also a 2/5 for 3, which means it can rumble, and it gains us 5 life off of a Trostani. Shamanic Revelations is probably my favorite token draw card because it costs 5. Well, the Camaraderie and Collective Conscious costs 6. This one costs 5, and it just draws us a card for each creature you control. It also has the Ferocious trigger, but we're not interested in trying to work around that. We're not going to hold this card back until we have enough ferocious creatures with power 4 or greater, to gain 4 life for each of them. Granted, there's going to be a scenario maybe once or twice where a Rampaging Bayless pooped out a couple of beasts, and then we just draw into a Shamanic Revelations, and wham bam, draw 3 cards, gain 12 life. That's going to piss some people off, but beyond that, I think I'm just totally happy using this as a second Harmonize effectively, or maybe a Harmonize +1. We can draw 4 cards off of that. I consider that a pretty huge success. Alright, lastly, we have Yavimaya Elder. That's a 3-mana 2/1. And we can sack him to draw a card, and when he dies, we put 2 lands into play. Hey, you know what's really good? Putting planes into your hand with an Amari Shepherd out. Anyways, enough about Amari Shepherd. Stop talking about Amari Shepherd. Jesus. Okay, so this guy, he can stabilize you a little bit early in the game. But he just puts 3 cards in your hand. For a green creature, that's pretty freaking awesome. Now, let's talk about the dregs. These are the cards I couldn't really figure out what to even do with. I'm not even really sure why they were in here. They're all fairly bad for EDH. We have Centaur Healer. That's a 3-mana 3/3 that gains you 3 life. I guess if you were in a life gain deck, whatever. I don't even know. Alright, Gather Courage. 1 mana, instant speed, target creature gets +2/+2 convoke. I guess you can convoke Amara. That's great news, but Amara wasn't even in the deck, so, you know, get bent. Pollen Brightwings, 6 mana aura. I don't even think I should read any further beyond that, but it does have a lot of text, so let's go through it real quick. It gives a creature flying. Okay, that's okay. And then whenever that creature deals damage to an opponent, then you make that many 1/1s. So there is a few scenarios where Pollen Brightwings may be able to get you back your investment. If you manage to hit somebody with a Desolation Twin with a Pollen Brightwings on it, I mean, it gets Desolation Twin over a blockade, gets him flying, gets him evasion. So there is some small synergy there. Mere Battle Sphere, some of these other cards. Other than that, I can't imagine the excitement on my opponent's faces when I cast Pollen Brightwings and go to attack and then they just kill the creature and say, "Good turn, bro." All right, Selesnya Evangel, 2 mana 1/2. Pay 1 and tap a untapped creature we control to make a 1/1. Wow, such a bad card. Tap 2 creatures to make a single 1/1 token. Unbelievably bad. It taps Amara, so, you know, you can hold off a split second on trashing this crap card. Siege Worm, that's a 7 mana 5/5 trample. Do you know what else is a 5/5 trample? The thing that comes out of Advent of the Worm. And that's a 4 mana instant speed spell. But Shannon, this thing has Convoke. I don't fucking care, man. This thing is terrible. This was barely playable in Limited, and it's sad to see it here in this guild kit. But hey, you know, these weren't built for EDH, so I guess you have to have a couple duds. Speaking of which, why the hell is there a Venati Shieldmate in here? It doesn't synergize with freaking anything. It's a 2 mana 2/2 Vigilant. End of story. And Watch Wolf. You know what's a bad card? Call of the Conclave is a bad card. You know what's a worse card with a deck that populates? A Watch Wolf. Alright, moving on. Cut all those cards as soon as you get a chance when you're upgrading this list. Or you know what? You don't have to play one of every card that's in the guild kit, so cut them right away. Alright, let's go to the lands real quick. I was kind of surprised how many good lands we could jam in here. I was a little worried. I have not played with a budget mana base in quite a while, but here we are. We jammed in an Evolving Wilds and a Terramorphic Expanse, or it was included, I don't remember. But either way, those are great landfall triggers. We can't obviously run fetch lands right now, so these will have to do. I also running Exotic Orchard, but I happen to notice it is $1.23 right now, so, you know, murder me in the comments. Fortified Village is effectively we're gonna call it a Guild Gate Plus. It comes into play tapped, but there's a potential for it to not, which means it's already better than the Guild Gates that were included, right? So this has the potential to come into play untapped if we have another forest or plains in our hand. We got to reveal it. We're going to run Grove of the Guardian, which we can sack it and tap 2 other creatures, paying 5 mana, to create an 8/8 Vigilant, which is right up Trostani's alley. I mean, that gains us 8 life and gives us an 8/8 Vigilant. And it gives us something to populate. Croson Verge is like an explosive vegetation, and we can sack it to put a forest and a plains into play from our deck tapped. We're also going to run Secluded Steppe and Tranquil Thicket, which are cycle lands, allowing us to draw cards if we have draw these lands late in the game. It comes with a Guild Gate and a Sanctuary. We're going to also add in a Stirring Wildwoods. This is a Guild Gate that can occasionally become a 3/4 reach creature. I have a sneaking suspicion one of my opponents is going to be playing Aurelia, so I figured adding in a Stirring Wildwood would be a good way to trade with Aurelia if she comes at me like a spider monkey. Sungrass Prairie is a Signet land, and I think these cards aren't played enough in EDH. I especially love to play these in decks where I have too many Wingding lands, too many Wastes, too many Reliquary Towers and Scavenger Grounds and Strip Mines and Tech Edges and all that shazazz, whatever. So this allows you to filter Wingdings into colors, especially important when Trostani costs broccoli, China dish. So, I mean, this is just another Selesnya Signet. Alright, that wraps up the Guild Kit list. As you can see down here, it comes out to under $60, although it's missing Trostani Selesnya's voice. But we know 20 of that comes from Privileged Position, and a good chunk of the rest of it comes from that Guild Kit. So I'm estimating this is around $50 investment, so $20 for the Guild Kit and $30 in single 1DH cards. I'm pretty excited about this list. It actually comes pretty close to a pretty decent semblance of the full budgetless list that I run with a lot of success recently. So I'll link that list below. Let me know if you saw any budget cards that I missed, or if you have any questions. And if, of course, if you like any of this kind of content, whether it be budget, specific brews, guild kits, or guilds, be sure to let us know so that we can make more content up your kind of alley. All right, guys. This is Shannon, the Timmy, signing off. As always, it's not about winning, it's about sending a message.